You're listening to WKDW Radio 97.5 and KDWRadio.com, broadcasting from the Bishop West Real Estate Mobile Tower right here in Northport, Florida. We are honored to have a special guest in the house. I had to move Public Works to next week. We're going to have, or next month, next week, we're going to have them on and talk about recycling. But we wanted to get the lead guy involved in the recycling program so we could go more in depth and talk about how the recycling program works and how they actually save money to the city of Northport because of some really creative ways they've adapted the recycling program to really kind of I think kind of geniusly put some money back into the recycling pool of money, I guess. And I've got Debbie McDowell, Commissioner McDowell,
Hi, guys.
and you know a little bit about what they do with Public Works, and I really want to get the community to really pay attention because there's some really cool stuff that they're trying to do to cost save, I guess, because we spend a lot of money or did spend a lot of money sending it out. But now that we have the recycling program in the city, it's really set up to work quite well, hasn't it?
Oh, yeah. And our city is one of the few cities that still do the dual recycling, where we recycle 1 week the paper and then the next week we recycle the commingled. We're one of the few cities that continue to do that. And by doing that, we get a larger return on our recycled materials because it's not considered dirty anymore, where they're all together. Right. We get a larger return on that, and it's very helpful. Helps keeps costs down. But Frankie and whoever he's going to have on your show next week is going to do a fantastic job explaining how much money they've saved and how the process works. But I can tell you, it helps with time. Time is money because we don't have all these different recycling trucks going up to the recycling centers and dropping it every single day. You know, each recycling truck, you figure there's 5 to 7 of them going up to the recycling plant every single day. That's a lot of wear and tear on our vehicles. And it also helps save money, not only in gas and the wear and tear, but staff's time. And we're also doing the same thing with yard waste. We just opened up the yard waste transfer station, and we're planning to do something with the hopefully soon a garbage transfer station, so that way then our trucks aren't going up to the landfill. Each truck maybe once, sometimes twice a day, especially like the bulk pickups, they go up there a lot. So it's going to save time, which saves money, which saves taxpayers dollars, and it may not reduce the taxes, but it will offset any increases. So well, it's going to be cool. He'll explain it all really well for you.
And that's really why I wanted to kind of shift this around, because having people understand that, that they get upset a lot of times post budget time if the taxes do happen to go up, even a little bit of an increase, people get up in arms. This is time for people to really understand that city workers are actually really trying to find creative ways to keep that cost down. Yep. So that they don't have to go into the budget and increase it astronomically. If, let's say, we didn't have any of these programs set up in Northport right now, I know that they're going to be able to answer this question much better than you, and I know you're not prepared for this, and I'm not trying to throw you under the bus, but it's a very simple question. There would be something to be paid for if yes. we didn't have this program intact right now and running, correct?
Absolutely. Well, the recycling center, the recycling transfer center, yep. has already paid for itself. So right now this is considered pure profit, which has helped keep the taxes lower. Yes, we are proposing a $5 increase in solid waste, but if we didn't have this in place and it's already saving money, instead of a $5 increase, it might be, and I'm throwing a number out there, so don't crucify me, and it's not happening, but maybe a $20 increase. So it does help keep the taxes lower.
So that's really important for everyone in the city who is working in that industry, really to stay focused on numbers. And I know they're kind of numbers driven at the same
Yeah.
time that they're because it's kind of like their the badge of honor that they can keep these costs down, they can have the jobs here locally, but then just as you said, you take into consideration the wear and tear on the vehicles, the man hours that it takes. There's some cost savings there that potentially could reach some really high numbers.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
I'm going to save that really for next week, but I wanted to
do a
kick
great
off
job.
because it's to me, it's a really important thing to get out there. So share this program, get it out there to people that are listening now in the audience. And the more we share these, and I say this all the time, the more we share this information amongst everybody in the city, the more coverage we get, the more information that goes out. I had a guy who popped on I think it was last Monday, who kind of made some statements, and then he listened to what I was saying and came back with some a really couple good questions. This, we get together like this, and this was really on last minute for you.
Yes, it was very last minute.
Yeah, so we really don't sit and talk prior to the show to give an outline of what we're going to discuss, and we never really do that.
Nope.
I try to tip your hand a little bit where I was going, and the first thing I did was throw you a curveball. So, but that was an easy curveball.
I hope I handled it well. And
you hit that one out of the park.
Shuffle it up.
You did great. But we've had some big things happening in the city now, and we've got a new city manager coming.
Yes, October 1st is his start date. His start date is October 1st.
Awesome.
And
are you excited?
I am excited to see what he's going to do. I am excited to see how this is going to play out. I am excited to see what he is going to bring as far as leadership for our city. And I'm excited to work with him.
And so people know, you were the lone standing vote.
Nothing against him.
I get it. But there's something to be said about what you just said, because I had Barbara Langdon on, Commissioner Langdon, and she used the word momentum over and over and over again, and it was kind of cool. But you just used the word excitement, so I'm going to stick with that for a couple minutes, because your vote matters a lot of times. This time it didn't. But your attitude hasn't changed. Your that word excitement is still there, because ultimately, anytime that you're on the winning or losing side of a vote, you're still wanting the best outcome for the city, correct?
Absolutely. I'm going to live here for a very long time, so I want to see the city succeed. I want to see what's going to happen. There's a lot of work to be done, and a lot of that work is not something that is projected. It's more internal. This is not a secret. I shared all of this at the commission meetings, and there's a lot of internal things that need to be worked out, a culture change, and working with staff and bringing us all back. Not that we were separated, but bringing us all back together. Last year was a very tough year, losing the city manager. Jason's done a great job, but he has one word in front of his title, and that's interim. And that handcuffs him, because he knows he's just there to keep the wheels on the bus and keep the city moving until there is leadership. He is the leader, but he cannot express the leadership that I'm sure he wanted to, because he has the title interim. So now that we have a city manager coming, I am looking forward to working with him. And I hope he is able to help our city heal, help our city progress to the next level. And I'm looking forward to that.
Well, and you just said something too, the leadership style, and you talked about some healing, and I'm a big city bragger. when it comes to the public works and parks and rec and our fire department, our police department, and everybody at City Hall. I think genuinely they have the best interest. I may not always agree, and just like you and all the other commissioners, we may not always agree with how things get done, but ultimately the only thing that the commissioners want, and now the new city manager is going to want, and I will say this about Jason: he didn't want the city to fail. He kept he kept the truck going down the road the right way, and at least didn't cause any major disasters. In fact, he probably directed us through a couple things.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, normal everyday managers wouldn't have never thought they would have had to do. So, I've got to give him some kudos and give him the best of sticking with the city, hopefully, and working hand in hand with our new city manager. But
absolutely,
it's gonna be interesting to watch that partnership develop within the city of Northport staff and the new city manager, because it has to be a solid working relationship to make this city go to the next level. Don't you believe?
Absolutely. And part of that, and that goes to the healing that I keep talking about, and the excitement of that healing. It's not just staff, it is getting the directors and I use the analogy of Swiss cheese. We have so many holes of Swiss cheese because there's so many directors that are acting this or acting interim that. We have so many departments that need to get hired a director or a manager. And that's going to be part of what he's going to have to do right away. And that is part of the healing and finding the right fit and the right person for that job. And it's going to be very interesting to see what he does.
Was that is part of the healing process, and this is not picking on Jason at all, but you use that word interim. Can you explain why the interim word one is there during this time frame, real quick? I know it's a backstory, but also the manager spots, are they not filled because he was interim?
Yes. So interim, we have Jason is the interim city manager. He doesn't have a contract. Okay, he's not technically even a charter officer, and our city manager is a charter officer that the commission hires. We put him in as an interim city manager to keep the wheels on the bus, keep the city moving while we found a city manager. A lot of people are concerned. Why didn't you just hire Jason? Well, we took applications, and Jason, for whatever reason, that's his story to share, did not apply. Now, could we have still hired him and offered him the job as city manager? Sure, but he still didn't apply. So I don't know. The 45 applicants we narrowed it down to 11 for the semifinalists, and then we narrowed it down to 3 finalists. And that's what we focused on. Jason being the interim city manager, and I am not trying to put words in his mouth. Please understand that. He's a grown man. He can speak for himself. And I would love to offer the opportunity to see if maybe he would like to come in and do a show with you. But
I reached out to him today, and I have a message there. So hopefully he will be calling back.
Good. But I am sure as an interim, he may not have felt confident hiring a new neighborhood development services director. He may not have been comfortable hiring a new manager for planning and zoning. He probably felt that that's the city manager's job, and it's not for him to do that, meaning the interim city manager, to let the city manager create his own team. And again, I am not trying to put words into Jason's mouth. I am just sharing something from my perspective. It's got to be hard to be an interim, because I'm sure there are many times where he's like, oh, if I was city manager, I would do this. And it's like, okay, but you're not. So.
Well, wouldn't it? And I'm just going to put myself in that spot too. You know, you're talking about trying to make decisions about something that you're not really directing.
Correct.
And I think leaving the blank slate, although it may have hurt us in some regards, it may have helped us in the end better if the right people are picked and put in the right spots by the new city manager.
I think Jason has the wherewithal to be able to hire people
Sure.
for those right spots, and I think he has a very good sense of judgment of character for those people for those spots to fill that Swiss cheese, those holes. But again, that would be creating Jason's team instead of Jerome's team. So
I think it's going to be interesting to see where it goes, though, because
absolutely.
Giving a city manager a blank slate. We are kind of a blank slate to begin with. There's a lot of work to be done here. We're not even 100 years old, not even close to it.
We're not even 75 yet.
I know. I didn't even want to go there because we're all
the city is older than me.
Well, and we're in that. Yes, finally, I can now say that. 22 years ago, I thought, man, I'm so young here. It's okay. And now I'm getting older. So I'm kind of looking at things a lot different now when I start talking about age. I have to admit, I didn't think 60 was old before. I still don't. I'm only 2 years away from it. So it's going to be okay with that. It's going to be fun, though. I think fun and exciting to watch him come in. And between the two guys, I felt really bad because I wanted to come and meet with them on that Monday, but I actually I did something to my ankle and I wasn't able to walk. So I was struggling that day anyway. But I wish I could have met them. I've heard a ton from other people who walked up to me and asked me why I didn't go. But essentially they saw me limping and they understood. So ankle's better now, thank goodness. But it's the same one I had Achilles surgery on, so I had to baby it. I was really a little scared I was going to have to go back under the knife, and I'm still not sure I won't. So we'll just leave that for another day. But it's going to be interesting to watch him pick people. I'm going to be interested to see how he motivates people because I heard that he's very inspirational when you let him talk and you get to listen to what he's going to say. He's young enough. Maybe he's going to bring some fire to the position that maybe we haven't seen for a while.
I look forward to seeing what he does. I'm looking forward to it because, it's fresh eyes. I get that. Something new. So we're just going to have to give him a chance to prove himself. And I just hope he's going to do really exciting things for the city of Northport and remove us from the headlines for a very long time.
Yeah.
I think Northport needs a break from being in the headlines. And I'm looking forward to being only in the headlines for good things and positive things and the change and the excitement that he will help bring.
Well, I often say that if we didn't have bad news in Northport, they wouldn't talk about us at all.
That's true.
And that's the truth. I'm trying to figure out a way to talk about some of the really cool stuff we have going on here. And we do have a lot that we can talk about as far as cool stuff. But I think a lot of the even more exciting things that we have to look forward to as a city is the growth that we're going to have, whether it be in the West Villages or in the rest of the city. I mean, we're talking about major growth going on right now with housing developments and we've got an anchor at Welland Park. We've got the Atlanta Braves. We've got Warm Middle Springs that really needs to I think get a foothold within the city. I'm going to really like to see what he's going to do with that because it's not on the radar of citizens here at all. We all know that. We've talked about that. And I would like to see something done on the local level to really get people educated on what Warren Mill Springs is and what it should be doing for the city. Because it's going to put us on the map if it's done right. Don't you believe that?
Absolutely. And we just got to give it a chance to get those buildings refurbished and get the cafe open and get some small, spa-like things going. And that's first and foremost. And I know that you've talked about Warren Middle Springs quite a bit these past couple of months. And, right now we're kind of in a holding pattern. We did give city manager direction to come back in about 6 months, maybe 5 months now, so we can have a larger discussion about the other phases and what that may look like. I suggested that we even bring back, I think it's Kimberly Horn, who helped us with the master plan, to help us navigate those next phases, because by then we should have the procurement completed, I'm hoping, and for phase 1, so we can start looking at phase 2. My biggest thing is, let's give staff a chance to get the I's and T's dotted and crossed for phase 1, get the construction started, get the remodeling started, and then we can kind of move on to the next one. I don't want to wait years, but to get that going, to see what it's going to actually look like and feel like, so that we can incorporate those other phases together so they blend and meld really well, instead of being, whoa, what were y'all thinking? So it's going to be interesting.
That's just another part of the city that I'm going to say it because it is right now. It's underdeveloped. It's not talked about. It's a treasure that's been there for ever. But it's not been in American eyes, local eyes. It's not been something that has been a topic of conversation anywhere. Now, if you go overseas, if you go over and talk to the foreigners who come in, unfortunately with COVID and everything else, we've kind of had a halt on a lot of that over the last 18 months. But they understand what the water is. They understand what the value of Warren Mill Springs is. And I think it's going to be interesting to see what we can do to educate the public. And I've been here over 20 years. I don't really remember anybody educating on Warren Mill Springs ever. We're talking about it now, and that's why I am talking about it, is because we actually own it now. We didn't own it before.
Correct.
That was an independent business that owned it, and we took it over as not as it sits today, because we've had city workers cleaning it up. We've had city workers fixing it up. The Band-Aid, I'm glad we're pulling Band-Aids off. Because the repairs that are going in there, they're desperately needed, and they were needed 14 years ago.
Yes, they were.
And we haven't owned it 14 years.
No, we didn't. Well, it wasn't even in the city limits. It was unincorporated Sarasota County. So Northport, should we have talked about it? Yeah, but should we have focused on it? No. It wasn't even in our city. Right. Now that it's in our city, now that we own it, now that we have come up with a plan of what to do with it, we absolutely have to. Part of that, the difference you were talking about, the Europeans and stuff coming over and using it more than Northporters, Americans, it's because it's a societal difference. It's a cultural difference. Yes. Europeans and they look more for the health aspects, alternative health medicine, whereas Americans are, hey, give me a pill so I can pop it. Americans rely on the pharmaceutical company. They rely on other things than alternative medicine. So that will have to have a shift for Americans to realize that there's more than just taking a pill. maybe going into Warm Mineral Springs will help your arthritis. I don't know. I don't have arthritis, but I've heard a lot of people say that it helps their arthritis. It helps
Right.
their skin. It helps a lot of different things. And just because you're not popping a pill doesn't mean that it's less value.
And I'm going to say this because you're kind of hitting on something that I don't think people are really even paying attention to. When it comes to taking vitamins and popping pills and doing those things. And then I hear people make snide comments about Warm Mineral Springs. Well, I'm sorry, you're probably taking some of the minerals in those pills you're taking every day that are right there readily available in the spring. So, the minerals aren't the problem with Warm Mineral Springs.
It's the mind shift.
It's the mind shift, and I think cleaning it up. I had this conversation with a really good friend earlier today. When you clean things up, other entities get excited.
Take notice.
You can't get excited about a restroom that hasn't seen an update since
6 years. Probably since it was built, John.
I know. I was being nice. Even to say the 70s is like a long time ago. I didn't want to go to 63 because then I'd be dating myself. But at the end of the day, it's realizing that yes, while we have these things going on, we have a new city manager who probably doesn't even know what Warm Mineral Springs is at this point.
Well, we're going to find out real quick, isn't he?
Now. What's that?
He's going to find out real quick now, isn't he?
Yes, and I think that's going to hit home really quick with him. The other side of it is he's got a lot to do to get caught up with the city. And I was doing some quick math because I figure it's going to take him 4 to 5 months to get a foothold and his comfort level in the city. And that's about the time that he's going to come back, and the staff is going to work with him, of course, to give ideas for Warm Mineral Springs. So the timing is pretty much right on task. Was that a plan?
What do you mean? What is that a plan?
I don't think you guys sat around and discussed, hey, we're going to have a new city manager. We'll time this out. That was just how you operate, right?
No,
it's a timing thing that you still would have had to do whether you hired Jerome
exactly.
or not.
It would have to. The city still has to keep moving. Things have to continue happening. We have to upgrade Warm Mineral Springs. We had the downtown Welland. They just had their groundbreaking ceremony. So now we've got that economic thing. We've already approved what that looks like for the plan. And now we get to watch it be built. That is going to be really cool. And there's so many other things that are happening in the city that he's going to be a part of. And yes, he's going to have to sharpen that pencil and keep his eyes and nose to the grindstone and focus on things. I think the learning curve you gave him 4 to 5 months, I think is a little bit longer because he has to still hire all the staff. He has to learn everything. I mean, as a commissioner, it takes us about 18 months to kind of feel comfortable in our skin, but we don't have the access to staff that he will have.
Right.
So it is going to be shorter. I hope it's only about 6 months where he starts to feel comfortable in his skin, but I'm more conservative. So I will say 6 to 9 months where he really feels comfortable in his skin to be able to make decisions on his own. But he's still going to have to keep moving the city forward. He's going to have to keep the wheels on the bus. And Jason's going to go back to the role of being the assistant.
Well, and to have an assistant who's been in part of and I say part, it's a slice of the leadership role.
Correct.
It has got to give him some confidence too, because Jason, now having been in that role, can give insight into Jerome and on what's happening. And I'm going to ask this because it's because you were the standalone and you have an open mind into him wanting to be successful and you going, yes, we do. We want you to be
I
successful. But
want
I'm
to
going
be
to ask you this.
successful. If he's successful, our city's successful. If our
Correct.
city's successful, it grows and expands. Of course, for citizens to think just because I voted against him means that I want him to fail, I'm sorry, that I don't know where they came up with that. I
Right.
do not want him to fail. I just had a different perspective of what I, as a commissioner, was looking for in a city manager. That's all.
Yep.
No different than my other four commissioners had a different, from my vantage point, of what they were looking for in a city manager. So each perspective is very unique. Each perspective is very valid. I just was on the short end of the straw, and that's okay. And I wish him well, because then our city succeeds. I do not want him to fail. For anyone to think I do, I can't tell you anything more except I do want.
And I agree with you. I like your approach, because at the end of the day, who are you going to hurt by wishing that? I've never really understood that angle.
I live here. I've lived here 30 years. Why would I want my city to fail now after living here 30 years and being a commissioner for 5? That makes no logical sense.
It's the same thing that I said over a year ago with the pool, when people were complaining about the build of the pool. We're not gonna backfill it. It's
exactly.
Let's wrap our hands around it, brag about it, and see what happens when it's actually open. And it's not even open for a full year technically yet on non-COVID standard. But we've had some record-breaking numbers happening at the pool, and where are the doubters right now? I understand they're going to come out of the woodwork. I love the fact that they will, because when they talk, I hear doubt. So I don't want this to be a gotcha moment. It isn't a gotcha moment. It's when there's things that are happening in the city. I've noticed this with you guys. You're never all on the same page every single vote.
Nope.
It doesn't work that way.
And that's okay.
It is. Okay. Yeah. And the beauty is I don't think there's one city commissioner that walks around going, I just wish this thing would fail so I could say I gotcha.
Right.
Nobody's doing that.
Nobody's doing that.
To adapt. I talk to enough of you, not weekly, but often enough, and we see each other out at different events, and it's, you guys are a very hardworking core group of people who want success. We now have a city manager coming in that has really a lot on his plate, because we have a lot of moving parts. And I think we're different than a lot of cities in the fact that a lot of these cities are older, they're established, they have things already kind of going. We're new. We're building those new things. When we need a shopping center, we're not rejuvenating a shopping center. We're building the shopping center. So we're totally different than a lot of cities out there. And with that in mind, I want you to take a minute and now that he is our city manager, give us your thoughts on where you think his leadership is going to really help. I know you talked about the healing side, but I'm talking about the future, the vision. I know he spoke a lot about his vision and what he thought, but that's a guy who doesn't have his hands completely wrapped around us yet. And that was an interview. And those words are, I don't want to say they're practiced, but he's a professional. He's got a vast history. He just doesn't have a lot of history as a manager. So I know. And I don't want to pick on him, because I want to give the guy the benefit of the doubt, because everybody has to start. And I used this line last week that I as a kid, I watched a really, really great ball player who came up through the farm systems, and no one thought he was going to be anything special. It's just Derek Jeter turned into something amazing, and I got to watch him at AAA in Columbus, Ohio. we might be looking at it a Derek Jeter as far as management. I hope if he does turn out to be Derek Jeter, we can keep him here long enough to have him be a Hall of Famer. I think that's our biggest concern, is that when we get people here that are of good quality, it's hard to keep them because we're a good stepping stone for a lot of communities. And I hate to sound like that, but we are. I mean, we're young. We're kind of shakers and movers where everything else is established, and towns that are looking to rejuvenate themselves are looking for those superstars. What are we going to try to do if this turns out to be a Derek Jeter? Is there an adjustment there that we're going to try to make to keep him?
I can't answer that. I would hope so. Nobody wants to lose a city manager after 2 years or 3 years after the time and money that we have invested in him, only to have him be a rock star and get traded somewhere else.
Yeah.
That defies logic.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would hope that we would regroup and figure out a way to keep him here. But at the end of the day, my crystal ball is broke on that one, John.
Well, I'm going to use your crystal ball again because I want to go back to the question I asked, which is, where do you see his skill set really coming in handy now with the city? You talked about the broken pieces. You talk about the hiring. Do you think the hiring is going to be a crucial step for him when he first gets here?
It's going to have to be. I mean, he can't build a team when he's got a whole piece of Swiss cheese that's filled with more holes than cheese.
How many openings do we have? Roughly. Don't have to be perfect.
I'm going to say probably 7 to 10.
Wow.
That's executive level. I'm not talking the other employees.
That's a big number.
That's a very big piece. So in order for him to be successful, he's got to have the right people in the right places at the right time, and get the players that are currently holding these acting assistant positions either back to where they were to mentor those that took over in the interim, or let them continue where they're at. I don't know what he's going to do with that whole thing. And that is going to have that to me is going to be his first test. That's going to be his first test, is the personnel issues.
Is that a question that you addressed when you were talking to him?
Yes.
And were you? And listen, he made it down to the last two. There had to be some sort of a comfort level there, and there still has to be, because I know that you're excited. I know that you want him to succeed. Is your confidence level still pretty sky high for him being able to pick the right people, or is that a concern because he doesn't have the experience?
I have said from day one, when it comes to Mr. Fletcher, he does not have the experience as a city manager. When you hire somebody for a job, you've hired many people, I'm sure, in your lifetime, and you had in your mind what you are looking for that perfect candidate. And if you had on that list someone with experience of 3 to 5 years, and somebody came in with 0 experience, would that give you pause?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
That's where I was. When you say that that was my requirement, because I am one of 5 that is hiring him. My requirement was that he had 3 to 5 years experience as a city manager, not an assistant, not county assistant, that was one of my requirements. Somebody who was in charge of the whole show for 3 to 5 years. The other requirement that I had was that he was ICMA, CM credentialed. That means he already went through the process through ICMA, which is the city manager's
credentialing.
Yeah, their credentialing process. So it's not college. It is specific to city managers to help them be a city manager, to show that they have what it takes to be a city manager. So that was one of the other requirements I had. He doesn't have that. He's in the process of getting it. I'll give him that. He's in the process of getting it.
Yep.
But for me, I wanted somebody who was experienced as a city manager and had the credentials as a city manager. And there was no changing my mind any more than I could change the other commissioners' minds. It's just a philosophical difference. I had to vote my conscience based on what I was looking for a city manager of our city who is growing, who's growing by leaps and bounds, somebody that had the experience instead of on the job training. I pray and hope Mr. Fletcher is going to take all of these words and prove me wrong. That's my excitement. I want him to prove me wrong. I want him to look at me when I am exiting in 3 years and say, hey, Commissioner McDowell, remember when you gave me that challenge? Here's what I did. Here's how I succeeded. And I will give him a big high five.
Well, and that's just the love for the city at the same time, because you've got, when you're sitting in the chair up on the dais and you're making these choices, sometimes they're not the most popular, are they?
No. And sometimes you vote all by yourself. And
I got to believe that there was a time in your life, the first time that you took that stance where you were the only one, when you first became a commissioner, that you probably had that red tint on your face here a little bit going, oh my gosh, am I really doing this? And you did. Do you still feel that? Do you still feel that when you do it now, when you're like
Absolutely. And it's probably even worse now.
And why is that?
Pardon?
Why is that?
I don't know. It just because I understand a little bit more about what goes on, and I don't know.
See, I think when you first, and I've known you a long time, so this is my cheating moment, because I've watched you change a lot.
Hopefully good.
No, it's all good. It's all good. I care about you anyway. So it's the challenge of the job that changes a person. It's also the engagement of the people, that I don't know that you always had people that you had around you, but I don't know that you had this amount of people from all angles coming at you on a vote. You always were part of leadership, whether it be in baseball or wherever, but it's different.
Yep.
When you're a city commissioner.
Well, the decisions are important, and I want to get it right. I go back to, I look forward to giving Mr. Fletcher a high five in 3 years as I leave office.
Right.
I truly, truly do. I don't want to be, guys, kind of warned you. That's not what I want to do. That's not who I am. That is not who I am. I want Mr. Fletcher to succeed.
I haven't met him, but I've heard a tremendous amount about him. I'm going to say that I don't think he's going to fail. I really don't. I think he's
don't want him to.
I think he's going to be a Derek Jeter. I'm betting on that. I want to give the man everything I can as far as support, because I think he deserves it. One, he went through the rigors of getting hired. No matter how the vote turned out, it was still 4-1. So there's a lot of support within the city. I also think we have good staff. I also think staff needs to be shaken every once in a while, because I think while our staff is good and great in some regards, there's no reason they can't be greater. And I think they believe that too, because I think all of them in their own levels, they all care. And I think it's going to be interesting to see somebody come in with a different perspective. And I think he draws that. I think he draws that big time. And I think you're right too, on the side of let's keep Northport out of the negative press and see what happens on the positive side. And I think they're going to be curious. I think reporters and TV stations are going to be curious about him right from the start. I don't think it's going to take any time for people to start talking about, and I'm going to say this, the good, or the bad about what they start printing. They have a tendency to print bad about South County. We've got to change that image, and I think that's a huge task all by itself. So if he can change the image of Northport, get the right staff behind him, and really get his hands wrapped around this in that 6 to 8 months or 5 months that because I think he's going to come in here and work overtime. I just see him getting in there and spending his 12 to 14 hours a day getting this thing under his belt so he can start making some changes. And I think that's why you guys hired him.
I can't wait to see what happens. I can't. I'm excited about it. I am excited about it. Even though I voted against him, I am still excited about what he is going to bring to the city. I didn't vote against him. I want to make sure people understand that. I voted against his lack of experience as a city manager. That to me was prime number one in my book.
Right.
That was. I mean, we had an inexperienced city manager before. He knew the city. He worked with our staff, but he didn't have any city manager experience. I've only worked with Jonathan Lewis, who was the city manager shortly after I arrived, for a short time after I arrived, and then he went to the county. But he was the city manager for a few years, and he was a city manager before it. So I felt at this point in time, based on the growth that we have going on, that we needed somebody with experience. That's all. It was just a difference of opinion, different perspective, and that's all it is.
We only have about 7 or 8 minutes left, but I want to ask you something now that we have talked about in the past, and I think we are truly working on the neighborhood connection of West Villages, Welland Park, and I say neighborhood because they're part of the city of Northport.
They are Northport. They're not. Yeah. It's not just a part of it. They are Northport.
They are Northport.
They're Northport.
Yeah, they're Northport. I get it.
They are in our city limits, and they are Northport.
And I want to address this because we have done this in the past where we've talked about the and I don't want to say lack of effort because I don't think it's a lack of effort. We are a big city with a lot going on and a lot of moving pieces, and that area is like a mecca all by itself right now. And it is. The wheels are greased and it's running. The train is going down the track faster than we can keep up with it. But that's also good. But
that was the plan.
Exactly. It's not new. It's not something that, hey, we just created this. It's been the plan. But when you think about it, and I want you to answer this because I know that you had to ask this question or someone did. Does he have a plan for building a relationship with the people in the West Villages so that they feel part of the city? Or we, you know what I mean by that?
So shortly after I became a commissioner, we as a commission instructed city manager to hold a town hall for the West Villages, citizens in the West Villages area. And we focused on the West Villages. We gave a little bit of history. We shared with them our departments and what we do and how we do it and answer questions. It was very, 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 very well received. Very well received. The citizens, I feel, walked away from that town hall with a much better understanding of Northport and how we fit in and how they fit in with our plan for our city. Then fast forward, we did another one about a year or so later. My perspective, why are we not doing this for all of the citizens of Northport? Why are we focusing only on the West Villages citizens and sharing with them, only them, instead of citywide? We have so many neighborhoods in Northport that don't understand the Northport history. They don't understand why West Villages is important and why Cedar Grove is important, why Heron Creek is important. Every single area within our city is just as important as the others. Yes, West Villages has more to offer. They're having a downtown. They have this, they have that. That's because they're new, they're vibrant. It's a different mindset, but they are still part of Northport. And all of Northport needs this education, not just one specific area.
I agree. And I'm glad you said it like that, because the you know how much I tend to want to yell at people about not voting, not being involved, and not understanding what their city is. But then also on the backside of that, they want to complain about it. If you don't understand it, you can't complain about it. I made this statement the other day that if you don't vote, then you really don't have a right to complain. Because what are you complaining about? You didn't vote to put the person in. They're doing what the voters want them to do. If you want to change something, you have to learn to go to the voting booth. And I think we're young enough. I just looked up the average age, and I think we're one of the youngest communities on this coast, if not in Florida.
46, like
46.1.
Yeah.
I was like, holy crap, you know. And we have gone up. And it's my age. I'm guilty of adding to that number. It's going to be interesting to see what he does, because I gotta believe that he's not used to, and I don't know anybody that is, the lack of media attention from a city this size. And it's because WKDW is the only radio station we have. We don't have another one in Northport, and we're kind of on the outskirts of Northport. We're not quite annexed in yet, hopefully, in the future. But it's one of those things where you know, when it comes to news, we talked about this a little bit. When it talks about news and things that are going on, it's negative press is sells ads. I don't, you know, it just does. And they don't want to talk about the inspiring things that are happening here. Go ahead.
You know the phrase "bad news travels faster than anything."
It does.
So good news doesn't sell newspapers. Good news doesn't sell headlines. Good news doesn't. It isn't shared at the front of the opening news broadcast at 6 p.m. But you know what? I don't want the bad news. I don't want any negative news. If we get no news, I can live with that.
Right.
We have to create that news. We have to tell that story. And I'm sorry, John, I'm going to probably say something that the FTC may not like, but we are doing a piss poor job selling Northport and the positive things that are happening in our city. I do my very best on my commissioner page to share the good things that are happening in Northport. But you know what? It doesn't sell. You know, it's just, I think, how mankind is. You know, they want to look at the sensationalism. They want to talk about the things that are controversial and create rift and strife and division. Why talk about things that create unity and are positive about what's happening in our city? It's kind of like, well, that should be happening. And I don't know. I think we need to focus on good things, because there's a lot more good than there is bad.
You know, the kumbaya moments, they're not in the news network.
No, they're not.
They're really not.
I'm not looking for only the kumbaya moments.
Not a few here and there.
Kumbaya gives even the good news a bad connotation.
Right. So, yeah, that's true. That's true.
But we have to start focusing on the good things that are happening in our city. And if people don't want to read about it and they go, well, I didn't know that was happening. Well, that's on you.
Well, and I think we're going to be, I think we're going to be all excited to see what he does in the very near future.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Getting out there,
I'm excited.
There's a lot of changes, and I'm just hoping his, and I'm going to say this because he is a grown man, but I hope his youth gives him the energy and the stamina to keep up with what's needed, because we are a large city and we have a lot of work to do.
Yes, we sure do. And I'm looking forward to seeing what he does. And, you know, I hope he has thick skin, because it's going to be hard these first few months, trying to get to know everybody and understand what's going on. His ear is going to be so tired of hearing everybody talking in it. But I think he's going to do a good job, and I'm looking forward to it. And I think we're out of time. I heard somebody
Yes,
say
we are. All right. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate
you are so welcome. Have a lovely day.
You do the same. Thanks, Commissioner.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now. You guys have a great day.